Yeah, PvP is rather unforgiving. I wish I knew this stuff when starting out. Hey, it's Dan, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. Now, in today's video, guys, I want to go through and talk about 5 things I wish I knew when starting PvP. Having played PvP for 4 or 5 years now, I have learned an awful lot. There was a time when I was a bad player, and I'm not, some god at the moment. I'm a good player, but I still got things to learn. And I've learned a lot in that process though, from being quite bad, getting killed, being just absolutely annihilated, to where I am today, where I'm killing people, I can hold my own. And I'm going to share with you the things that I feel are the most important things, and I wish I had known them and how important they are when I started out. So we're going to go through and talk about what they are, why they're important, and if you try these yourself, I can guarantee that it will elevate your gameplay as it did with me, and it will make you a better player long term. And if you do like what we do with these videos, where they're guides, tutorial based, then make sure that you are liking, you're commenting, and more importantly, you're subscribing, as we have much more on the way. But with introductions out of the way, we're just going to jump straight into it. So first and foremost, 5 things. What are they? Well, the biggest thing I wish I was told straight away is burst first dot stroke DPS. Having played PvP and PvE, I've done trials, I've cleared all the arenas, on Veteran I've got the trifecta stuff, I've done it, all that stuff. And PvE was all about damage per second. It's your DPS, it's your light attack weaving, keeping your AoE dots on, keeping your single target dots on if you use them. That changes from meta to meta, but it's about keeping that damage up. In PvP, however, it's vastly different. PvP is all about, in my opinion, burst. Burst is the ability to basically take out a huge chunk of somebody's health in a very quick or short space of time. This normally means queuing up combos, so using delayed skills such as Deep Fissure, Subterranean Assault, Blast Bones. Every class has one of these, by the way, and then landing another skill that at the same time to then create lots of damage instantly. By doing it this way, you can then do, instead of 4 or 5k damage per hit, you're doing 10, 15k damage if they crit, which obviously that's much harder to react to if you're doing that to another player. And that was the biggest thing I learned, that when you're doing PvP, if you're about 70% health, which typically with 30k health, that's around 20k health, you can be one-shotted from that. If someone hits you with a good combo and an ultimate, you will be in execute range and you'll be executed and are dead. So for me, the biggest thing I learned was that if you get kind of below sort of 75-60% health, you can be one-shotted against a good player. And so you have to be much more cautious. Put on your buffs, put on a heal over time, so that way, if they do hit you with one of those really nasty combos, you've got a good chance of surviving. And I wish someone told me that early on. It took me a long time to learn that. So that's the first thing I'll do, is practice like bouncing back from just really big burst hits. Best way to do this, go in a duel, fight somebody who's on like a Nightblade or a Warden, where they've got access to in-cap and spec bow, or they've got access to dizzying swing and sub assault, or Deep Fissure and sort of flame clench, for example, with false pulse. So you've got kind of a big burst combo, and just see, can you bounce back from that when they hit you really hard? How much does it do? Get a feel for what comes in, so you know kind of how cautious should you be when you're at a certain health threshold, and that would really help. Dots and stuff I found aren't too potent. As long as you have a heal over time and you've got movement, you're absolutely fine. So that's my number 1 thing. Really work on that burst first dots. Burst is key in PvP. For number 2, and it's a really simple one, it's what skills do you need to be competitive? And I know that sounds really daft, and I know you can look at a build video, and I looked at build videos, everybody does it. When I first started out, I looked at GhstofO ESO, I looked at Dots Gaming, for example, I looked at Vanguard, who did a mag DK. This is years ago. And you learn from it. You go, what are they using? And that's the first thing I'd say. Look at a build. What skill are they using? What do you need in your kit to do well for PvP? And if you kind of go through and think, actually, what categories should I cover? In my opinion, you need these. You need a burst heal or a shield. I treat shields as kind of pseudo burst heals. So sorcerers use shields because they're kind of like their burst heal. Templars would use Breath of Life, for example, or Honor the Dead. So you need some kind of way to bounce back really quick when you're low health. You also typically want a healer, like heal over time. So that could be Vigor, that could be Rapid Regen, for example. You then want a spammable, so something that you can use quite cheaply that does just consistent damage with your light attacks. So if you're a Magicka character, that's typically Elemental Weapon, Crushing Shock, for example, or one of your class skills like Swallow Soul. If you're a Stamina character, that's normally Dizzy and Swing. It might even be some of the dual wield skills as well. You then want what is kind of a burst skill, and every class has access to one in some form. Necromancer has Blast Bones, Warden has the Beetles, Templar has Power of the Light. DK, they have slightly big ultimates in order to kind of help that, but they also have the Inhale. It's not as good in all honesty, it's one of the ones that need a bit of help. You then obviously have Nightblade that has spec bow, so that's Mercy Resolve. There's loads of like just burst skills in that. You need that in your kit to be able to just land that really big hit when you need it to just help get someone low and do a big chunk of their health. You also need a stun as well, that's really important. Being able to stun somebody when you do a burst combo allows you to get them on the ground and you can execute them, which is the last skill I'd say you need, is an execute. On top of that kind of just key stuff, I would also add in a damage buff, so things that give you major sorcery or major brutality, so Betty Net, Rally, Degeneration, you get the idea. And then some kind of movement buff as well. The movement buff could be Shuffle, it could be Race Against Time, it could be Mistform, but some way to just get you out of trouble if you need to. If you have all of those things covered, you will have a build that is very competitive, and you'll have a few slots spare where you can add in what you see fit, whether it's dots, whether it is more heals, you name it. And what's great about doing it this way, from what I found in my experience, is you can go, I'm going to drop my burst skill and run 2 dots to make up for that damage. So by doing it this way, you're kind of being mindful of what you're losing and how can you fix it with changing the skills or changing the poisons, for example. So that was the biggest thing I learned, that you need certain skills to be effective in PvP, and without them, it's really, really hard. The third thing I think is really important is consumables, actually. And it sounds really simple, but potions can be a lifesaver. I use my potion as a defensive mechanic. So if I'm low health, low resource, pop the potion. It's why I use Tri-Stats so much. It is one of those ones that it gets you out of trouble. Potion, burst heal, you're back to full health almost instantly. It's a really, really good way to get out of just a really, really sticky situation. And this is also true for helping kill people too, particularly detection potions against Nightblades. The amount of times where you're in Cyrodiil or Imperial City and you go to get the Nightblade low and he cloaks away, or she, and you're just going, oh my goodness, where have they gone? You're chasing them around like a lemon, and they then come out and hit you with an in-cap into spec bow and you're dead. Whereas if you have a detect potion, that just doesn't happen at all. I'd also suggest as well that if a Nightblade does go in cloak, put on a heal over time and block, you won't get one-shotted, so that's just a good counter to that. But like just having the right consumables can really help, and that's also true for poisons. If you're on a damage over time build, double dot poisons are vastly better than a weapon damage glyph, so just make sure you're using the right potions for what you're trying to do. Do you need more survival? Tri-Stat, immovability pots, they're great for survival. Do you need to counter Nightblade, detection potions? You know, there's a potion for what you need. There's even armor potions, so you can get a potion for whatever you need, be really specific with it. The fourth one, which is something I think is quite important and really, really overlooked, is the armor traits and the set complements. And I'll talk about that last bit in a moment. But the armor traits are really, really important. Everybody knows who does PvP, Impenetrable is one of the most useful traits currently. Now, there are other traits that are just as good, like Reinforced, that did see a really good buff because crit is now lower, but you also have traits like Well Fitted, for example, and Sturdy. So there's lots of traits that are really useful for PvP, and it's how do you get what you need? And in all honesty, the biggest thing I'd say is it's active versus passive defense. If you're somebody who finds it really hard to block and roll dodge at the right time to move around correctly, you're going to be much, much better using passive defense, Impen, Reinforced. Those two things there are great for you. If you're somebody who goes, actually, I can block and move around kind of when I need to at the right time, you are then more suited to use things such as Sturdy and Well Fitted, or maybe a mix of all four of them. You might go with 3 Well Fitted and 4 Impen, for example. And that was a real eye-opener, that actually picking the right traits for what I'm trying to do with my build is really important. On a Nightblade, for example, I'm highly mobile. Impen isn't that useful because I've got Cloak and I can just get away with roll dodge and Cloak. So I'm going to be much better with Well Fitted just to avoid damage completely. And that's what I think is really important with the armor trait. Pick the armor trait that's right for you. If you're a brawler in their face a lot, taking lots of just hits, you want reinforced or impen, 100%. Because sturdy is too slow. If you're a tank and you block a lot, having 1 or 2 sturdy might be useful, but not massively. So that's what I'd suggest. Pick the right traits for it, and it really, really helps. Invigorating, training, they're terrible anyway, but pick the right traits for what you're trying to do. As for kind of the set complements as well, that's all about picking sets that are right for your playstyle, your build. On a Magical Warden, for example, and a lot of Magicka classes, I know from experience that they have really generous scaling with their damage with Max Magicka. So you typically find that most Magicka classes, there isn't any good real spell damage sets, but there's lots of great Max Magicka sets like Crafty Elfique, Necropotence, Bright Throat's Boast, for example. And so they typically give you more damage versus something like Julianus. Even though it's spell damage, just the Max Magicka is generally more raw damage, particularly Necropotence. So I found that certain sets complement certain classes, and that will come with experience. So if you're unsure about that, I have videos on the channel on how to do that. I also have build videos as well, but pick sets that are complementary to, firstly, your class and what you're trying to do. If you're a Stamina Dragon Knight and you want to go be a brawler, you need obviously lots of resistances. So you might want to use something like Eternal Vigor, Health Regen, that's great to have. You might use Fortified Brass if it's no CP proc. So there's lots of ways around it. Like the proc sets are disabled, Brass is a great option. So is Wizard's Riposte because it has lots of crit resist, even though it has the 5-piece disabled. There's lots of ways around it. So I think pick a set that kind of complements your class and then your playstyle, what you're trying to do. If you're going for a dot build, the Unleashed Terror, brilliant. VMA Axe, great with this. You've got 2 nasty dots on there now. Azure Blight Reaper, your dots will proc that set. They complement one another. All my builds try to do this. I go, what do I need for my character to just be functional? And then how can I specialize it for what I want? And that's the biggest thing I'd suggest doing. So that was a real eye-opener, learning about build sort of creation like that and the right traits and gear for what I want to do, rather than this is the best gear for this class. Actually, it needs to work with what you're trying to do with it as well. And then the last thing, and this is probably the most important thing out of all of it, is movement. Movement and line of sight. You'll hear all YouTubers, all people who 1BX go, move, line of sight, that's how you do well. And what does it mean in all honesty? I played the game and I was terrible when I first started. I could kill stuff, but I didn't move properly and I got absolutely annihilated. And all it means is it turns that kind of 4v1, where there's 4 people trying to kill you, into a series of 1v1v1v1v1. So it's just lots of smaller fights rather than just lots of people hitting you at once. It doesn't take a genius to go, if every person light attacks me, I'm against 8 people and I get hit with a light attack from each 8 of them at once, doing 1,000 damage each, that's 8,000 damage instantly. If I move around a rock though, and now only 3 of them can hit me, that's now 3,000 damage. You can see there's quite a big damage reduction, and that is what is so important about movement. It's all about trying to get yourself in an advantageous position, so around a rock, a corner if it's battlegrounds for example, or Imperial City, where you can then recoup, heal yourself, gain some regen back for example, and then when one of them comes round, you can then unload your burst, which that refers back to number 1, not dot, burst damage, to nuke them and get a kill. You turn that kind of 4v1 down to a 3v1 now. You then have a much better chance of staying alive against 3 people than you do 4 people. Whether they're good or bad, less people is always easy to stay alive against. And movement is key to that. Being able to just not take damage was such an important learning curve for me. And one of the best ways to learn how to do that, in all honesty, is go as a Nightblade, and your job is to just harass people, not kill them, just harass them. That's what I did, and learn how to move on a Nightblade. If you get good movement on a Nightblade and you put that onto a Warden, Sorcerer for example, you're moving correctly, because a Nightblade unfortunately has to go to rocks and corners and stuff with Cloak because they can't afford to stay in the open. They are super squishy without Cloak. And if you can stay alive on a Nightblade, you then start to say, can I do it without Cloak? If you can do it without Cloak, you're then ready to go do it on another class. So I would honestly say movement is king to PvP. That is why, as you saw in the sort of thing 2, so kind of point 2 about bar setup, what do you need? A movement buff like Shuffle, Race Against Time is key to that. If you are getting hit really hard, you're in a bad place, you need to get out of there. You can't stay and tank it. That's just not a thing. It doesn't take a genius, as I said, to go 8 people hit you with a light attack, that's 8,000 damage. If they add a skill in each as well, you're taking 15,000, 20,000 damage in 1 second. Even if you dodge half of that, it's still so much incoming damage. And so movement is just the biggest thing that I learned. But there you are, guys. That's the top 5 things that I wish I knew when I did PvP. It will be different from player to player. This is things I have learned, and it took me a while to get to grips with some of them, particularly movement. That's always a tricky one to nail, but it comes with experience. So let me know what you think. Now, do you have a different top 5? Would you go, oh, I would add this, or I disagree? Let me know in the comments. But I'm gonna wrap this video up here. So I want to say a massive, massive thank you to the Patreons. Like, their support really, really helps me make these videos. So if you want to support myself and the channel, there's a link in the description, and it really, really helps. As much or as little as you can, it's really helpful. And even liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing is equally as helpful. So if you haven't done that already, make sure that you do that. But as I said, this video is long enough as it is, so I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and bye.